I also seem to remember there being some kind of bug where, now I'm pretty sure I had NVIDIA at the time. Maybe it wasn't like this on Radeon, but for the longest time, no matter what I set the options to or the console variables in Half-Life or any Gold Source game, it would always have anti-aliasing and anisotropic filtering enabled. Like it was forced somehow, even if I had it forced off in like NVIDIA Inspector. There's been all sorts of weird shit through the years. They're constantly changing the games, and Half-Life 2 has changed a lot. And speaking of this, data archaeology stuff, I'm going to try to see if I can find, basically retail disc '04 release, the actual original one, which took forever to fucking unlock on Steam back in the day. They were not equipped for that. Holy fuck, I played it start to finish in one sitting. But most of that day was waiting for it to fucking unlock. I was like, holy fuck. I think I had to start over at one point. I fucked something up, or I don't know what happened. But some people weren't able to get it to run at all that day. But, trying to find a version of that's a little bit more complicated, and it's a bigger download, which, I don't know. I'm not super concerned with it, but I'm mostly just trying to see if I can figure out the actual information, because there's way more versions of source. And as I mentioned before, you can technically download versions of like the old builds from Steam. I think you have to do it with like console commands or some bullshit, but the main problem is, at least as far as I've read, you have to use the you can't get anything before 2013 when Steam Pipe was initiated. It's like, all right, well then that kind of defeats the fucking point, doesn't it? But one of the biggest things with Steam Pipe, that was when they like officially moved everything from GCFs to VPKs. And more about that was that the way everything got handled behind the scenes, it fucked up all the mods. And I had mentioned Plan of Attack before because I was reading about it some more, I'm mostly trying to find the versions I played, because the map that was like the most popular map, and I don't remember the names. I was playing it like yesterday, but now I already forgot again. Was it the one called Spark? Whatever the fuck it was. That was like the most popular map. Well, the problem is, I had to start playing that shit really fucking early, because that map doesn't look anything like the version I played. Like the main cafe area looked a lot different in the versions that you can actually find on ModDB, all of them. So, it's possible the versions I played literally don't exist anymore. But it didn't look like that. But that was also one of my favorite maps. It was like the best map for the most popular one. But in the process of reading about it, I noticed on something, a tagline saying how, it was the first total conversion mod for Half-Life 2. I forgot about that. I used to be obsessed with total conversions, and that's probably how I found it, unless I was just on ModDB. I used to spend all my time on there looking for the latest, greatest mods. And I forgot that they used to advertise it on that. But something else I found was the old ModDB page for that Sven Co-op 2 that was supposed to come out like 20 years ago. The screenshot of the rebel citizen next to the APC. Dude, that screenshot, as soon as I saw that, I was like, holy fuck, dude, that's a blast from the fucking past. And yeah, there's just so much cool shit from the past, and it's like they don't want you to be able to fucking have it. And as I've said in the past, I used to be a huge Valve fanboy, and I can't believe I ever liked that piece of shit fucking corporation. And I don't understand why everybody wants to suck Gabe Newell's dick so much. But I think it's because early on, Steam was actually okay. Now, if you've been on there as long as me, then you would know back in the day everybody was hesitant about, like once they started to put non-Valve games on Steam and digital distribution started to look like the future, everybody was worried about, well, what happens if they delete your games? What happens if they go out of business? This and that. And it's just sad to see that all kind of come true. But at the same time, nobody give a fuck. But at first, they had pretty good deals, and yeah, it was more convenient, and you could just uninstall the game if you didn't have the space, or like, you didn't have to fuck with discs. But over time, they've just gotten fucking worse and worse. And there's a lot I could say, but limit it to 15 minutes. Yeah, I'm not going to go a whole lot into it, but I used to want to work there when I was a kid. I started fucking with the Source Hammer Editor when I was 13. And I was watching something recently. GP was the dude's name. He had a new video out today, I think. But he's, like, here's stuff you might not know about Half-Life. Now, his videos actually do have stuff in them that I didn't know about. But apparently a couple of the dudes worked on Half-Life got hired when they were 16 based off of their Quake 1 maps or something. And I'm just sitting here thinking, when I was a teenager, that was the fantasy I had. It's like, man, as soon as I turn 16, I'm going to work for Valve. And, in practice, every mod team I've tried to be on, they fucking, it just doesn't go anywhere. I don't know, it's just a lot of bullshit. And of course, all the scum fucks that I remember on the forums from back in the day, they get to go on to be successful level designers. They actually get paid to do the shit for a living, like they deserved it. And, it just pisses me off to think about. But it's always bittersweet. I try to stay on the, the sweet part of it. But they want to remove that because they want to act like they can't just let you play the old version of the fucking game. And it's actually, a lot of these games, it kind of surprises me how many of them don't even have the source code anymore. Like, just games in general. So it's like, well, why are you making a fucking HD remake then? I don't know. You would think there'd be better preservation than there is. But, what I've been doing today was, now I've got basically the new version of Half-Life 2 on Steam. That's got, bicubic light map interpolation, which I turned the fuck off. That was something I wanted 20 years ago, but I mean, now it's kind of doesn't matter. But I turned that off. I pretty much tried to do everything to make it look like the day one release. So, I set it to dxlevel 80. Or I might use dx81 to try to make the shadows look a little bit better. And then I installed the custom detail textures that make them blank. Because that was another bullshit thing they did. They added detail textures in episode 2, but then they eventually ported Half-Life 2 to the newer engine, which put detail textures into it. And, instead of it just being an option in the console or whatever like it was in the first game, Source is so advanced in comparison that there is no way to do that. You either have to edit every single VMT to take that line out of it, or the easier route is just download VTFs of the detail textures that make them just a blank texture. But what's retarded about it is that it's still being rendered. It's still wasting VRAM, and it's still doing those calculations. Even if 1 times 1 still equals 1, well, the math is still being done. It's wasted cycles. It's just stupid. But, I got that thing that's called Detail Remover Mod. I set it to dxlevel 80. I disabled it as much as I could to try to make it look like the day one release. And I just figure for now it's good enough. But at some point I might try to fuck with getting a retail version up and running. Because even if I found, my discs, my actual physical discs, I would still have to crack them or whatever the fuck it is to make it run without Steam. But yeah, going to GCFs from that to VPKs was a pain in the ass. The SDK tools have been broken for literally ever. And yeah, the modding scene never recovered. But every mod now wants to be some paid for bullshit. So it kind of doesn't matter. But I've been fucking with the mapping stuff for probably a few weeks now. Because I fuck with Source Engine Hammer Editor all the time anyway. Just kind of making whatever, just to make something. I just do it as a hobby. I just enjoy the process. But I've been importing more custom textures. Like, another thing I'll do is I'll download the old beta, alpha, leak, whatever you want to call it, textures for Half-Life 2. It's kind of nuts how many textures got removed from the final game. But I'll download all that. There's a texture pack that's ripped from Stalker Shove Chernobyl that I use a lot. I'll rip the textures from Soldier of Fortune 2, Max Payne 2, different shit like that. I have the Max Payne 2 textures installed for Counter-Strike Source though. So I would have to copy them for Half-Life 2, which would take up more fucking space, which is a fucking pain in the ass, but whatever. But I just, I even used, like I would import all the textures and models from like Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, and, at a point I was using the global offensive editor with everything from the other games imported, including having to use this thing called VTX Fixer or something like that. Because the different versions, the models would be invisible if you didn't do that. But, that was another thing, reading about this. So I basically always have Steam in offline mode. Right now, because I kind of have to have it that way, but also I'm not complaining. So I had no idea until I was reading about, a lot of this stuff on, developer wiki earlier, like yesterday or whatever, that apparently they finally changed it to be what it should have been the whole time, where CSGO is its own separate entry from CS2. But then the problem is that kind of doesn't help me now because I'm in offline mode. I'm not going to go into I'm not going to go into online mode. I'm not going to try to download anything because it's just going to be more games. Steam tries to lock up saying that they're not updated. It's like, dude, they're single player games. Who gives a fuck, right? It's like people can pretend Valve or Steam aren't evil, or Gabe Newell's not evil. They can scoff at anyone who says it, but it's the fact of the fucking reality. All right, like a motherfucker that is going to say that you didn't even buy the games you paid for, you're just paying them for the temporary right to use them. Who is going to be so petty as to just rob features from the game, or leave games broken for 10, 15 fucking years off of changes that they force on you that there was no point to do in the first place. Now apparently Steam doesn't even support Windows 7 anymore. And I love that how software, when stuff doesn't support something anymore, that means that it won't work anymore. Okay, well then it didn't no longer get supported, it's been disabled. Not supported means you're not going to give me technical support with it because you consider it out of date. That doesn't mean I magically stop being able to use it. It's just so much anti-consumer practices of Valve and Steam that that's a fucking 3-hour video of its own. Yeah, I can't believe I ever went to fucking work for Valve. If I knew what I knew now about just everything in general, dude, I wouldn't even play games in the first place. I wouldn't even listen to music. It's all these grindcore, fake punk, metalhead, whatever shit. It's all corporate shit, right? I would never listen to it.